Hello, Miss Manyi Lee. May we call you Karen?
Yeah, you're welcome, Miss
Thank you.
Nicole.
Thank you very much. Well, my name is Kathy Lee, and I have been with the University of Waikato for 12 years as the Dean of Law. I would now like to introduce you to the Vice Chancellor, Mr. Larry Johnson, who has been with the University of Waikato for a total of 20 years. Mr. Vice Chancellor.
Thank you, Dean Lee. Good morning, Ms. Karen Lee. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Mr. Vice Chancellor.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to have you here. Yes, we will have a series of questions on this position that you are applying for, and we want this to be a relaxed conversation, and hopefully you'll have time at the very end to pose us with questions that you may have. Back to you, Dean Lee.
Thank you so much, Vice Chancellor. So just a little bit about the history of the university. The University of Waikato ranks 375 out of the 1,000 best universities. With a total of approximately 12,000 students, 2,500 of those who are international students, and it makes up 70 nationalities that are represented within the university. So we are a very diverse university. We would like to thank you for joining us in this interview today. We will now move forward to your presentation and immediately following to the interview process, which will last approximately 30 minutes. Please hold any questions that you may have until the end. Let's begin. I give it to you, Ms. Lee.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you, Dean of
welcome.
Law and Vice Chancellor. Now I'm going to show the PowerPoints that I've prepared. Can you all see the PowerPoint?
We can.
Thank you very much. First of all, thanks once again for inviting me to attend this interview. It's my pleasure to share my research, my teaching, and my aspirations if I can come to work with all of you in the coming semester. My presentation will be divided into 3 parts. I'll talk about my socio-legal research, followed by my cross-disciplinary teaching experiences, and lastly, my aspirations for the law school. First, I consider myself a law in context scholar, and I know that law in context is also one of the pillars of the law school. The law in context refers to the study of law that takes into account the social environment and the society in which the law is embedded. Because the law is never operating in a vacuum. It interacts with other social forces, political forces, social forces, and my research is about the interactions between the rule of law, society, and the political process. And in my case, because of my experiences in Hong Kong, I've been researching the common law, which operates in a illiberal political regime, and which brings to me a very unique perspective, because as we all know, Hong Kong, like other common law jurisdictions, such as Australia and New Zealand, practice the common law. But after 1997, Hong Kong has been practicing the common law under an illiberal political regime, that is mainland China. And my research brings on board a very unique perspective, that is how the common law survives in a different political system that is not liberal as operate in other common law jurisdictions. And my research focuses on the comparative legal studies, that is how different societies perceive the rule of law and ideas such as equality and dignity. And because of my Asian perspectives and my familiarity with Asia, I'm able to bring on board my experiences in studying the legal systems in different societies. And my second research focus is on professionalism, which is also another pillar of the law school of Waikato University. My research is about how the legal profession interacts with the society, particularly in Hong Kong. I believe that lawyers, even though they mainly practice in the legal arena, do not just practice the black letter law. Because as I said, law operates in a very unique political and social environment. And my research is about how lawyers perceive their work and their social roles. As some people may say, lawyers are the conscience of society. In my current research actually studied how Hong Kong lawyers see their role in a society that is constantly changing because of our changing political environment. Recently, I've also participated in a new course offered by the Hong Kong University Law School that is ethical lawyering. My part is to share my unique perspective with aspiring lawyers that are studying law as to how they can exercise the moral forces after they leave law school and become lawyers. I believe that with all these experiences, I can contribute to the Law School of Waikato University by writing and teaching new courses, particularly regarding courses with an Asian focus and a comparative legal perspective. Secondly, I would also be very honored to help organize conferences and seminar and research seminars that touch on Asian legal studies. And I would be able to invite international scholars to take part in our international conferences because of my international connections. And lastly, because of my experiences in Hong Kong and in other Asian societies, I would also be ready to supervise research projects at the undergraduate and postgraduate levels. I'll be very willing to accept PhD students who would like to research topics regarding comparative legal studies and legal studies with an Asian focus. And now let me move on to discussing my cross-disciplinary research and teaching. I consider myself having the best of both worlds. I have very solid common law grounding because of my legal training in New Zealand and my legal practice in New Zealand. So I'm able to teach traditional legal doctrines to law students who aspire to be lawyers. On the other hand, I've also got experience teaching law-related courses to students from different disciplinary backgrounds, from business students to social science students. With my diverse experience teaching law to different students, I can share my unique insight about the rule of law, because the law is not only about the black letter law, and it's not only about the legal principles that are being applied to resolve our clients' problems in court or any cases that are being argued in courts. The law is actually a force in society that can influence people's behaviors. And in turn, the moral forces in society, they also influence the making of the law. And that is why in many countries, the lawmaking process can be very controversial. I believe that my diverse experience in teaching law in a cross-disciplinary perspective can allow me to share my reflections about the legal system. In particular, I show my students that the common law system is very resilient because it can be practiced in different societies, in different jurisdictions. On the other hand, the common law can also be vulnerable because even though we got all these doctrines, such as the doctrines of precedent and margins of appreciation, the common law is practiced in different societies that are influenced by the politics of the day. And therefore, for example, in Hong Kong, even it practices the common law because of the political changes. The common law is evolving all the time. And all I want to teach my students is that we need to look beyond the black letter law and the legal process itself. And also, we also need to see how our society operates, how the political process is being monitored by the people and also by a very effective judiciary. And I believe my contribution to teaching of the law school is that I can bring on board my experience teaching law from different perspectives, and I can broaden the perspective of my students, whether they will eventually become lawyers or they will want to contribute themselves in different professions in society, be it being journalists, court personnel, or teachers. And at last, I would also want to share with them my Asian experience, particularly my Hong Kong experience, to show that the common law is being practiced in different societies and will lead to different results. And lastly, with all this experience that I have accumulated over the years, I would like to share how I would want to contribute myself if I'm lucky enough to work with all of you at Waikato University Law School. First of all, I would like to be a member of a diverse and international faculty. I understand that the University of Waikato houses a very diverse faculty members. There are people in our faculty, there are people from all over the world, for example, from the UK, from Ireland, from North America, from South America, from South Africa, as well as people from local New Zealand. It's my pleasure to join this very diverse international faculty and to contribute to the administration of the law school. And because of my experience in helping to set up a law and business department after I finished my PhD, as well as my current experience working in a research-intensive university as a program leader of an undergraduate program, I believe that I can bring on board my experience in managing various courses in my department and contribute to the further development of the faculty at Waikato University. And secondly, I also have the aspiration to establish a network of Asian legal scholarship in New Zealand. I understand that in Waikato University, it focuses on the legal studies from an Asian Pacific perspective because of the unique location of New Zealand. If I'm able to be here to share my experience with all of you, I would like to bring my connections from Hong Kong, from Taiwan, from Australia, Canada, and US, and to gather all the wisdom and experiences together to form a network for those who would like to study Asian laws from a Pacific Asian perspective. Because of my previous experience as a visiting legal scholar at Melbourne University's Asian Law Centre, I believe that we can be able to set up a network similar to those in Melbourne. And in future, perhaps we may be thinking about the possibility of setting up a similar legal research center in Waikato University. And it's also my aspiration to develop a collaborative research projects with all these legal scholars who are interested in working on a project about Asian law, about comparative law from a New Zealand perspective. I would also like to contribute further to the law faculty's law in context focused with my Asian legal scholarship. I believe that my experience in Hong Kong and also in the Greater China area enrich my experience as a legal scholar with a focus on socio-legal matters. And I believe that I will be able to enrich the reservoir of experience and scholarship here in Waikato University and continue to engage in research regarding the rule of law from a cross-cultural perspective. And last but not least, I would also be very willing and ready to help mentor students from diverse backgrounds here in Waikato University. I understand that the university houses a very diverse student body. Nearly half of the students are from Asian, Pacific, and Maori backgrounds, the indigenous population of New Zealand. And the other half of the student body includes students from an international backgrounds, from Asia, from other parts of the world, including the US, Australia, and Europe. Because of my experience as an academic advisor of non-local students here in my university currently, I'm very experienced in mentoring and encouraging students, particularly from Southeast Asia. If I'm able to join the Waikato University as one of the faculty members, I'll be very honored to help mentor and help students from different backgrounds to fit into the law school and to learn about the rule of law together. And for that, I'm very honored to be able to present my aspirations with all of you this afternoon. And I would be very happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lee. I do have one question. Earlier in your presentation, you spoke about Black Matter Law. Can you give us a little bit more information on what Black Matter Law means?
It's Black Letter Law. Black Letter Law refers to the law in terms of legal text. For example, in law school, we teach students to research the legislation that are passed by the legislature. So black letter laws refer to the legal texts that are passed by the legislature. Why do we call it the black letter law? Because those laws consist of letters, right? The letters, English characters. In a way, they are subject to interpretation, right? So what we would like to teach students is that while it's very important to understand the legal texts as they are, it is also very important to understand the rationale behind the passage of those laws, right? And how these laws would affect society when they are being interpreted and enforced.
Thank you very much. And I would like to turn it over to our Vice Chancellor to see if he has any questions over your presentation that was given.
Yeah, thank you, Dean Lee. I only saw one thing that kind of stuck out as a little humorous. You mentioned on one of your slides about ethical lawyering. I assumed and thought that all lawyers were ethical. Why don't you talk about that a little bit, because it implies that there's some unethical or non-ethical lawyers. Explain that a little bit.
Ethical lawyering is a new course offered by the University of Hong Kong Law School. The background about the emergence of this course is that in the law school, students are primarily taught black letter laws, like the subjects like commercial law, the law of tort, contract law, and criminal law are all traditional legal doctrines that every aspiring lawyer must know. Yet, these courses are about the technicality of the law. And very seldom are students taught about the rationale behind all these legal principles. They were mostly taught as they are, right? Lawyers are just asked to apply all those principles as they are established by the court. Yet, students are very seldom are taught about the ethical part of their legal practice. Usually, they would take a course on legal ethics after they leave law school and studied a practical legal certificate before they can become lawyers. And what we want to do is that before they leave law school, they should have some grounding about the ethical aspects of legal practice. The term ethical lawyering may not be about the unethical or ethical behavior of lawyers. It is more about how lawyers as a profession can serve the society with a professional ethic. It is not about whether they should cheat the court or they need to hide some facts because of the interests of their clients. Rather, it is about how lawyers as a group in society can look at what happens in society with an ethical perspective, whether they can contribute themselves in any social movements, in the enhancement of democracy in the wider world. And these things are seldom taught by the law school because of their primary focus in teaching law students the black letter laws and the traditional legal principles that were established by the court. And we believe that ethical lawyering is a very valuable course because it teaches students being lawyers serving commercial clients is not the only way for them after they leave law school. There are a variety of ways in which they can serve society with their law degree. For example, some students may decide to engage in politics, to become political assistants for a political party, or they become journalists with a goal to help enhance freedom of the press. And this course actually is trying to broaden our students' perspective and encourage them that there are a lot of things that lawyers can do for society.
Very good. Thank you.
Does that conclude your presentation, Ms. Lee?
Yes.
Okay, I would like you to please unshare your screen. You are welcome, so that we can get to the interview process portion of the meeting. So first off, I applaud you on a very well done PowerPoint presentation. You obviously read the job description. I noticed that you implemented quite a few of those things within your presentation. And so I appreciate that, because that lets me know that you're very passionate about the position in which you're going to hold. And so I just wanted to say thank you in that regard. Couple of questions for you. I will ask a few questions, and then I will have the Vice Chancellor ask some, and we will kind of go back and forth for a while. That way you don't get so bored with the tone of our voices going on and on. So the first question that I have for you is that this position is very research intensive. What steps will you take to ensure that your research plan aligns with the research plans of the university?
Thank you for your question, I believe that I'm a good fit to the law school because of my focus on the law in context perspective of legal research and teaching. For me, as I mentioned, my focus is about the comparative studies of law from different societies from different cultural and religious backgrounds. And I believe that it is also one of the main pillars of the Waikato Law School, in emphasizing the social aspect of the study of law. And so I believe that the research projects or ideas that I'll be developing would align with this pillar of the law school, that is law in practice. Of course, if I have the honor to join the law school, I'll be very happy to join the research teams of our law faculty and to contribute my views and my ideas to our colleagues so that we can do a collaborative research together, and I can contribute my Asian perspective and cross-cultural legal study perspective to our research team. And I believe that I would be one of the key members of our research team in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Give me an example of your leadership style and how you feel your leadership style will impact your students.
Thank you. My leadership style is open and assertive. I believe that nowadays, especially in universities, teachers sometimes are concerned about how students would evaluate our performance. As we all know, student evaluation forms an important part of our annual appraisal exercise. And sometimes we may want to be more lenient to our students. But for me, I believe that we should do the right thing, right? And that's why, while I also would be very considerate about the needs of our students, especially now under the COVID-19 situation, students have a lot of problems and difficulties. I and my team have been trying our very best in addressing their needs, right? And if they have any difficulty, we'll be very quick to help them solve their problems. And we are very open, and so we are very open to them knocking on our door or emailing us for any need of assistance. On the other hand, I need to be assertive as a leader. I need to tell them what they should do and what they can achieve to be an ethical and effective student. So I will tell them exactly what they need to do. And I emphasize that if they have any difficulties, we're all there to help them. But we also ask them to fulfill their side of the responsibility and to never make excuses. Because it's very tempting to make excuses because of our prevailing pandemic situation. Especially now we cannot see them face to face. But I would always emphasize that even though we all have different difficulties, but you all need to first do your part, and we will do our part to help you. So my leadership style and the way I deal with my students is that I will be assertive while I'm very open and also very considerate about their needs.
Very good. Now, as you know, for us who have studied law, the laws are different in different cities, states, and countries. I understand you're in Hong Kong now, but that you actually lived in New Zealand at some point. And so my question would be, how familiar are you with the New Zealand administrative law, constitutional law, and company law?
Thank you. All of these were compulsory law subjects when I was in law school. So I studied all these subjects at the undergraduate level. And in particular, I took an immense interest in public law. And that's why eventually I became a legal scholar, studying the rule of law and society. Public law was one of my favorite subjects when I was in law school, along with administrative law. And because I'm always interested in the interactions between the government, law, and society. And public law and administrative law are two very core subjects that are about the political process, the legal process, and their dynamics, and how the dynamics affects society and the people. And I believe that because of my research and because of my continued studying about different societies and how different societies adopt the legal system, I believe that even though I have left New Zealand for many years, I would never have lost touch with society. And especially because Hong Kong, where I am now, practices common law, just like what New Zealand does. The legal principles are actually very, very similar, especially for administrative law. And therefore, I actually can bring on board my experiences in Hong Kong and enrich the legal understanding regarding all these subjects when I come back to New Zealand.
Thank you. I will now turn it over to our Vice Chancellor, Mr. Larry Johnson, to ask a few questions. We cannot hear you.
Thank you, Dean Lee. So many questions in so little time. Ms. Lee, you have a quite impressive resume. Very thorough, very busy, very involved. So tell us a little about yourself.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor. Actually, my entering the law school came from a pure accident. I was in my first year sociology class when I met a Korean student who told me he was a law student. At the time, I was a new immigrant. I didn't speak good English, and I was surprised that as an immigrant himself, as a Korean immigrant, he was in a law school. And he inspired me by saying that law is a very good subject that you should take. And that conversation was life-changing. And the next day, I decided to apply for the law school. And over the year, I discovered my interest in the law, particularly regarding the dynamics between the law and society. And after I complete law school, I practiced law in New Zealand for 2 years, during which I found being a lawyer didn't fulfill my aspirations for the law. And eventually I came back to Hong Kong, worked for the government for 2 years, and eventually I found my inner voice asking me to go back to the law school. And that's why I went back to law school and complete my PhD on a human rights topic. And that's how I eventually made my way back to law school, to academia. That was what I've done for the past 10 years or so. And my interest in research and teaching remained very strong. I believe that my my very accidental encounter with that Korean law student changed my life, and it changed my life to the better. And I would be very eager to come back to New Zealand and contribute myself to the law school at Waikato University. Thank you.
Okay, well, good that you listened to your inner spirit there. I noticed quite a few papers and presentations that you've done on same-sex matters in China. Australia does not currently believe in same-sex marriage. How would this affect your lecturing if you were chosen?
My lecturing?
Yes.
Thank you. My research on same-sex marriage actually takes on an international perspective because currently China does not allow for same-sex marriage. So actually, my research on same-sex marriage, again, was quite accidental. When I needed to apply for the PhD at Hong Kong University, I was asked to do a research proposal. And at the time, I remembered what my teacher in the law of property taught us at the time when I was in law school. That is about how same-sex couples would divide up their properties when they separate. And suddenly I found, same-sex couples and their property matters would be quite an interesting matter. And because at the time, it was 2003 when I was applying for my PhD. And at the time, very few countries in the world have legalized same-sex marriage. And so I thought, it would be quite an interesting topic to explore. And especially because, as I said, I'm always interested in the dynamic between the law and society. And same-sex marriage being such a very controversial topic, I thought, okay, I will pick that topic as an example to shed a light as to how the law impacts society and how society impacts the law. And so my interest in that topic isn't really about same-sex marriage. It's about the controversials surrounding a legal matter that concerns society at large. So I believe same-sex marriage being an example, it can be something else as I teach. So I think what my focus in teaching research will be that law can bring about a lot of controversies in different societies. And same-sex marriage can be controversial in this society, but may not be in that society. Right? So I think I can use the sample very flexibly as I teach students in different subjects. And I also would be eager to develop research topics aside from same-sex marriage, as I have done over the past 5-6 years. And my interest now shifts to how lawyers can contribute to society, and also how different societies perceive ideas like legality and equality. And I believe that my same-sex marriage research served me well because it allows me to broaden my horizon and to study the law using different examples.
Okay. So you've taken a very tough subject and used that as a springboard for not so tough subjects. Very good. Okay, the next couple of questions are more textbook. What would your references say about Karen?
My references?
Yes, I think you titled it referees.
Yeah, I have 3 referees. What would they say about me? I'm not sure, because I know that they would have submitted their references to law school by now, and because the references are confidential, so I would not be, I would not know how they speak of me. But I can say that all these referees have known me at different stages of my life. Professor Richardson was my teacher in law school, so he has known me for, I think, 20 years. And Dr. Fairbrother was my previous supervisor, and we are still colleagues. And he knows my ability, and he knows the way that I work, and he knows how I lead a program. And I'm sure he would have things to say about me, about my ability, and about my perseverance. And for Dr. Whiting, I knew her when I was a visiting scholar at Melbourne University, and we are research collaborator, and she's a very gracious and very generous scholar as well as a friend. And I believe that what she said about me would be my persistence, and because she is a collaborator of funded research that I successfully got in 2018. And she knew what I've gone through before I could win that funded project. And she knew that I'm a very persistent person and I could persevere despite all the setbacks that I may encounter. And for me, I believe that I would actually have something very nice to say for them. I would be very happy if I can continue to work with all these very excellent people in my future position with Waikato University.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lee. My last question is more of an HR type question before I turn it back to Dean Lee. What is your greatest weakness?
My greatest
weakness.
My greatest weakness is my tendency to rush things through. Sometimes because there are so many priorities to fulfill, and I would push myself to always do things before the deadline. And it adds to my pressure at work, undoubtedly. And I always tell myself to slow down.
You mentioned persistence. You mentioned persistence earlier.
Yeah, and slowing down can actually help us do things in a more effective manner. It is something that I continue to work on because, as we all know, being in academia can be a very tough job. Even it's one of the best jobs in the world, it's also a tough job. And what I would do to improve on my weakness is that I would always try to slow down when I want to rush things along.
Very good, very good. Thank you for those responses. Back to you, Dean Lee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Johnson. Now, Karen, the next couple of questions are going to be sensitive in nature, but I think that they're very important since we are considered an international university with many different nationalities that are a part of the university. So the first question that I have centers around an article that was recently released in the news media. On September 25th, 2020, there was a claim that the University of Waikato had claims of racism against them. What are your thoughts about these topics? And how do you feel about racism being evident in a university?
Racism is a perennial problem for every institution in the world, not least on university campuses. And as scholars, not least legal scholars, we all have a responsibility to tell our students what is racism in the first place. Secondly, how we would deal with it openly and with a sense of humility. This racism, it has a very deep root in every society. And I believe that New Zealand is a society that has acknowledged its past failings regarding the racial relationships between the Maori community and the local community. And the government has done what it could to address the problem. And the problem may still be ongoing, but it is improving. And with regard to the alleged racism that's happened in the university, I believe that we need to deal with it with humility. And we need to acknowledge that we may not be able to fix it overnight. It's a problem that needs every member of the society, of the community to help tackle. But we need to acknowledge the problem, and we need to also not blame any single community. We need to tell everyone in our society that we all have a responsibility, and if we believe in diversity and biculturalism, that is also one of the main pillars of the society, of the university, we can address the problem and face the problem together. And I believe openness is what we need to deal with this problem of racism.
Thank you very much. How will you ensure cultural diversity measures are put into place that will appeal to all students, regardless of their race, religion, sex, national origin, and disabilities?
Can you repeat your question?
Absolutely. How will you ensure that cultural diversity measures are put into place that would appeal to all students, regardless of their race, religion, sex, national origin, or disability?
First of all, I guess, as in other universities, we need to have code of conduct to tell what is the expected standard of behavior for all members of our university, whether it's university faculty members, students, or even visitors of our university. And because we need to hold everyone to a certain standard, right? Because equal opportunities and discrimination can happen in different settings and can happen to different groups, right? Breed, ethnic minority, sexual minority, or people with other special needs. So we cannot be too focused on one particular community, right? And so that we may ignore the needs of other minority that may have other needs. And for me, we need to, as I understand, to have a unit that is particularly devoted to resolving the problems of like bullying, harassment on university campuses. So I would, as a member of the Waikato University, first of all, I take this very seriously myself. And also, I would always encourage my students to approach the relevant units for any assistance, as well as offer myself as a point of contact. Right? If any students would be comfortable to talk to me about the problems that they face, I'll be very willing to talk to them because of my previous experience working with students from all over the world, and also because of my familiarity with Asia. I think I'm in a position to offer my help if students may want to approach me for any advice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I also took a look at some of the articles that you had placed within your resume, which I have to agree with the Vice Chancellor that it was quite impressive indeed. And I noticed that you had some articles that were on young people, some that, of course, as he stated, dealt with same-sex marriages, some that dealt with equality, some that dealt with genders. We all have personal things that we don't deal well with, regardless of what it is. It could be age discrimination, it could be race discrimination, it could be cultural discrimination. Let's say that the discrimination going on in your classroom deals with how others feel about a particular person's religion. How are you going to gain order in your classroom to ensure that that person who serves a different religion other than what the primary religion is going to feel like that they're still in the right place within your classroom, that they still feel like they're a part of that classroom without feeling like an outsider?
As a teacher, I often set some ground rules in the first class of the semester. And some ground rules are more mundane than the other, like you can eat, just don't make any noise. If you go out, you just go out quietly. But for those sensitive matters, I think I would tell my students, I honor the principle of equality and equal human dignity. And so everyone in my class, whether they practice a particular religion or they come from a particular society or they belong to a particular ethnic group, you guys are all treated equally. And I also expect that you as students treat each other equally, because everyone who sit in this classroom is privileged to receive a legal education in a society as equal as in New Zealand. And you respect people because you respect yourself. And so I will set this ground rule to my students. And because they're university students, I do not think I need to lecture them for half an hour on equality and anti-discrimination. I just need to set this ground rule to respect yourself and to respect others, and to let them do what they think is right as university students. And if problems come up later on, I think as a teacher, I'll be very willing to be an arbiter or to be a reconciliator, right, for students who may have some misunderstandings among themselves. And because of my previous experience working in Hong Kong and my experience in dealing with different students and from different cultural backgrounds, I think I'm at the right position to be the reconciliator if that happened.
Thank you. I will now turn it over to our Vice Chancellor. We have about 5 minutes left. It has been quite an intensive and somewhat of a long interview, but it needed to be this way in order for us to get the questions answered that we have. So Vice Chancellor, go ahead with your questions.
Thank you, Dean Lee. I think I have 2 questions left. Ms. Lee, how interested are you in sports?
Sports, right. I am not a very keen person in sports, but I do swim and jog. I believe that we need to be active so that we can sustain our very hectic life. Even though I'm not a very keen sportsman, I'm very active. I do swimming and I do jogging. But I'm also interested in encouraging people to be active themselves. I know that New Zealand is a very sporty country, and rugby is our national sport. Right? I personally never played rugby, but I do join in the atmosphere, the cheers, and the sense of proud to be rugby players in New Zealand because they're the top players in the world. So even though I am not very keen in sports, I'll be very keen to take part in all the celebratory events, having drinks and parties with my colleagues, because I believe is part of our culture being in New Zealand.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we want our staff members to be fully rounded. And my last question is, where do you want to be professionally in 5 years and 10 years?
Thank you. Our world is changing all the time, as we all know. COVID-19 brings with us a new perspective, that is, life is forever evolving. So honestly, I do not know how I would be in 5 to 10 years, but I'm sure that I will still be in Waikato University. But regarding what I'll be doing, I have been constantly thinking, because as you may know, the jobs that we have nowadays may not even exist in 5 to 10 years' time. I recently interviewed some lawyers and asked about their worries about the law profession. Many of them told me, I worry many lawyers will lose their jobs because of AI, because of blockchain, that would dispense the needs for consulting lawyers in the future. So I don't even know whether some lawyers may actually lose their jobs in 10 years. So as law teachers, I sometimes do not know where I would stand in our changing society. But what my mentor has told me is that in this fast changing world, what you need is not to really envisage yourself what you'll be in 10 years or 5 years. That is, you need to tell yourself you got to forever improvise, adapt, and overcome any problems that you may face. And if you have that spirit in mind, whatever things you do, whatever things you face in 5, 10, 15 years, you'll be able to come out strong and resilient. That's what I would think I would be in 5, 10 years. Be resilient and be strong, whatever happens.
Adaptable. Okay, very good. Thank you, Ms. Lee. I will turn it back to our Dean of Law, Ms. Kathy Lee, to wrap this up.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Vice Chancellor. So Kathy, Karen, as you know, this position will temporarily be online, but we're looking at having it transition to a face-to-face in-person classroom early of next year. And as you know, it is going to be located in New Zealand. Do you have any problems with relocating to New Zealand if you are chosen as the candidate for this position?
I have no problem coming back to New Zealand. It's like coming back home. New Zealand is a place that I spent for almost 8 years, and I work there. I've got many friends there, and for me, it's homecoming. Of course, there are some logistical issues to deal with, but I believe that I have time to do it, and I've got a lot of friends who would be able to help me. And because of my resilience, I guess I'll be able to deal with any problems I may face regarding relocating back to New Zealand.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And then it would be remiss of me not to ask you if you have any questions for us, since we have asked you many questions today. Do you have any questions that you would like to ask us at this moment, to myself or to the Vice Chancellor?
I've got a question regarding the direction of the law faculty. Because so as far as I know, the faculty has a research center regarding Pacific law because of the proximity and close relationship between New Zealand and Pacific Islands. Are there any plans to expand the research specialty and expertise to Asian legal studies in Waikato University?
Okay, your video kind of stopped and stalled a little bit, but I think I heard most of the question. And so, as you know, since our university is very research intensive, we are always looking at new and innovative ways to increase research in all areas of law that we may be able to appeal to our students, because our main goal is to get students in, get the tuition money, make sure they can succeed and go out into the workplace. And so we will constantly look for growth and opportunities in which to increase our research efforts. Anything else? You're welcome.
And I would also like to ask a question to the Vice Chancellor. I believe that the university campus is now very internationalized.
Yes.
And there are many students from different countries. Does the university have any particular plan to expand its student body to other parts of the world in the near future?
Thank you for that very good question. Yes, without getting into a lot of detail, yes, we are constantly looking in our 5-year strategic plan to look at moving eastward into the Pacific and also westward into mainland Australia and even into Europe. I cannot go into a lot of details, but we are looking at branching the Waikato University to other parts of the, let's say, this hemisphere or this region of the world. Yes, we are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen, for your questions today and for your consideration for the position of senior lecturer here at our university. We will be contacting you in about 2 to 3 weeks with our decision. We would like to wish you to have the best wishes to you on your job search and on your future endeavors. This concludes our interview for today. Thank you again, Ms. Karen Lee.